Good morning. Welcome, everyone. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg, Avagnoni.
bringing you this week's Ascended World Collective Energy Share. So, it's so funny as I never even know where to start because I can never remember where we left off last week since everything happened so abundantly in every day.
Yeah, I don't even remember what we did last week either.
Um, it was about, realizing our choosing, that we choose.
Oh,
I
that's
was,
right. That's right.
yep,
Yep.
yep, yep. Also the whole looking at, bless you, looking at the, bless you.
Important stuff there, apparently.
Apparently. So, um, yes, it was the recognition that we choose our realities. The other theme that came up last week, and I did this on my podcast individually, my other podcast was about the dark, looking at the darkness within us,
Right.
right? And that was a big theme of last week. So there's a lot around a lot of this, but something I wanted to sort of talk about because this was really an interesting thing that happened, and and it's really a good something that was pinging me this morning. So, oh, there's a yawn already. I didn't even start talking yet. The conversation. So anybody, listening, because you and I've had this conversation. The whole conversation, like, so there's somebody so there was a whole situation that happened that was going on that was getting me really sort of frustrated, where um, somebody I know just kept on, like, they were in the area and they kept on asking to, stay at my house, and I kept on saying, getting guidance to say no. And so the funny thing was I was getting more and more irritated as the time went on. But the whole point of bringing this up had to do with, it was such a revelation to come to the point, because I was looking at it going, well, what am I, what am I not looking at? Because I finally got to the point of saying, okay, what, okay, if I started looking at this person, who I'm starting to get annoyed at, you know, like as me, then what part of me am I denying, right? Because it
Right.
was like, can I stay with you? 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 And I was like, no, no, which is also very unusual for me because I'm usually very open door, open arms, come and stay, whatever. And so the guidance was no, and it was clear, and there was not a like an egoic, like, oh my God, no. It was just no and no and no. But what I found was my reaction was getting more and more like egoic, right? Like, because then when I looked at that, like, well, why am I getting so bugged about this? I recognized it was because at some level I was doubting my guidance. At some level I started to doubt my guidance, going, well, if this person keeps on asking, who I know is who goes by their guidance, and I am continuously getting the same answer, even though they're continuously getting to ask me, why am I, like, where's the disconnect, right? And
Hmm.
I think this happens a lot, and it's a very subtle thing. And for some reason, it's really important for us to look at, because we will doubt our guidance. Like, if somebody comes at you and says, if somebody came to you, not just you, like, you,
Right.
Sarah, but I mean, like, generally to people, it's like, if people come to you and say, well, I was guided to do this or ask you or whatever, and you're guided to say no. Well, like, a
Right.
lot of times it goes over into well, who's wrong, right?
Well, and when does your guidance trump my guidance?
Right, right. So that was a really great experience, because when I finally came to that understanding of, it was just like, I understood why both of us were getting two different things.
Right.
Um, and it doesn't even matter what the whole background of it was. But then I was finally able to come back and say, my guidance has been this, and it's very unusual for me. And I was very authentic finally. And I said, look, I don't know why consciously. I sort of get the feeling this is why I'm getting no for this at right now, and it's not always, but it just isn't like right now. Both of us have other things to do, blah blah blah. There was just things that came up, and I'm just like, so, um, and it's something that has to do with continuing on our own journeys and yada yada yada. So there was no judgment, and when that came through, the authenticity, right? The true like solid feelings around that. It was, or not feelings, solid understandings or solid being more like that fierce authenticity that we talked about a couple weeks ago.
Right.
And it's funny because I got into a conversation with Scott about this. I'm like, so at some point we're not used to that fierce authenticity, right? That like I am confident in my guidance that if you are continuously getting different guidance that's opposite that, I can't judge. I'm not going to judge. There's no judgment. There is no judgment. Your guidance is your guidance, is mine is mine. And I'm not going to, I will continuously look at my guidance because I do and say, is this truly guidance or is this, egoic or is this whatever?
Right.
And if I'm getting its guidance and I look at it and feel into it and I'm trusting it, then there's no reason for me we want to explain all the time.
Right. 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 Which takes you away from admitting that you're choosing this.
Yes. Yes. And it puts you like it, and I realize that it's like if you just ask somebody something and they say no, and they don't give you anything else, right? A lot of times we say, well, why not?
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Justify that to me.
Right. Justify that to me, right? And so it's even if it's not asked, you still like, we're so conditioned to feel that, right? So if it's, I'm going
Or
to do
to
this,
or to
go ahead.
provide an explanation so you feel better about what you've said.
Right. Which then goes to the ego, right? Which means I
Exactly.
now have attached to the ego because I feel badly or good about something that I said
Right. And
instead of,
it immediately is disempowering.
yes. So I was looking at that yesterday because I was like, wow, there's a little crumb that we hide in the crevices like all the time. The need to explain ourselves when we are guided,
Right.
even in day-to-day interactions. And it was so funny because, like I said, it wasn't something I usually did. It wasn't something a reaction that I usually have, right? Or like an answer that I usually have. And then the ego starts to question it because it's like, well, what's the matter with you? Like, what's the matter with you? Like,
Right.
and then you don't even realize all the things underneath that are programmed, right? So like, oh well, how spiritual are you if you wouldn't like open your doors to like to somebody who
Right.
needs a
Right.
bed and
Well, and
how,
I think it ties directly back into saying like, oh, I didn't do that because I didn't have time.
right?
It's the same thing. I didn't do it because it wasn't a priority.
I chose not to. It goes back to the choice. I didn't do it because
Exactly.
I chose not to do it, right? Well, in this, it was like I had no explanation. Like I had no explanation. And that was the thing that sort of threw me a little bit of why I would say no continuously,
Right.
right?
Right.
I mean, especially now, like, because before there's been a lot of stuff that's been going on. And I was just like, well, and then it's sort of like a voice is like, well, what's one night? And it's like, no. And it was just like that. It was just no. And if you think about it, when we're little kids and our parents say no to something and they just say no, right? It makes a kid crazy, right?
Right. Right. Yeah. But why? But why? Because that opens it up for debate.
Right. And then it makes the implication that somebody's right and somebody's wrong.
Right. Or that your answer needs justifying
Yeah. And so we
or,
have
or
this,
defending.
Yeah, and we have this so embedded. So the thing was, it was such a great lesson for me because it was constantly looking at my own guidance and then listening to the little whisper underneath of doubt that started to creep in, right? And then I realized that my irritation and my anger had nothing to do with the other person. It had to do with me sort of like that, like not wanting to look at it, like not wanting to, like not wanting to not, it wasn't not wanting to look at it. It was like I don't want to look too closely at my guidance because I'm afraid it's wrong or I'm not listening, like or something like weird like that. It was very
Right,
subtle. And when I
right,
looked at it and it was just there and I kept on getting the same answer when I was like, well, so give me clarity on this whole situation, right? Um, it was it was just like, why do you need an explanation? Like there's there's a purpose. Can you trust there's a purpose
right.
to just say no or yes or whatever to something, right? And we judge the word no. We do judge the word no, by the way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And some languages don't even have a word for no, like Japanese.
Yeah. So it's and no is really representative of exclusion and or the way we see it as exclusion. Oh, excuse my yawn. It's the but sometimes all we need it for is a redirection. And redirection is really what it was all about.
Right.
And whether um because some things, and we fall into this whole thing is we think we know what would be the connected, or like, and this is a definition, connected or spiritual way of doing something. And we
Right.
define that.
And I don't believe there is such. I believe it's based on the individual journey and individual guidance, and that, what's right for one person may not be right for everyone
Right,
after that.
exactly. But we even just think about that, like I said, just something as simple as letting somebody stay at your house or letting somebody do something. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
to say no, like it's like, oh, well, we talk about, oh, well, no doesn't really exist in the universe. Well, it does in our duality based thing, but the energy of the universe is not inclusive. It's like instead of no, it's instead this is to happen instead, or this is a way to redirect this. But we're not really like often conscious enough at that moment to really grasp that and move into a different direction without a redirection that says no, right?
Right.
And I understand the whole reason now. Like I understand all what it was about. And what was interesting was I came back to that individual and I was, honest about the guidance and what I understood. And then she came back and was like, I understand. Okay. And that felt like it just cleared out everything because it was like this ground mounting, like sort of irritation, probably on both sides.
Right. Right.
So that's something I think that's really important for us because we talk so much, but there's so many things like we're still living a 3D life, like while we're still here,
Right.
right? So it's like everything that we do, if we're guided, if we don't understand it and it doesn't match the way that we tend to flow, sometimes we need a redirection because of that flow, you know?
Right.
And I think that ties hand in hand with the whole darkness thing too.
Right. Yeah, I was looking a lot at that this weekend also, the light versus the dark, and the judgment of the dark and the judgment of the light for that matter. And I just I just found so much power in the balance between the light and the dark. And whether you want to call it yin or yang or black and white, goodness, bad, whatever whatever terms you want to put on it, but I feel that there is something created from the balance of those.
Well, or the wholeness of them, really.
Right,
Letting them be a part of the same thing. Or not letting them, knowing or acknowledging and accepting them as being part of the same thing.
right, right.
You know, there was a quote you had sent me last week, that meme about, was it like, what did it say now? I can't even remember. About the dark and the light. It was like, that it made it
Oh,
sound like there is no dark, it's only
right,
absence of light. But I'm like, but that's really what we've created in duality. So it does exist
right,
because we've created the perception, right?
right, right,
But the thing is, you also would not perceive light if there was no dark. It just is whole.
right.
And that's the whole discussion. So, you know,
Yeah,
we can sit there and turn blue in the face and argue whether if it's all an illusion, if none of it's an illusion, because it's either one or the other, or it's both, really. It's all an illusion. It's none of it's, because it's all what we've created.
right. Yeah,
Um, yeah, that was pretty much. It was a lot of there was a lot of themes about looking at those dark facets, and I don't even want to call them dark anymore. There's like got to be like the
right,
separated, but if you say the separated facets or the exclusionary facets or the lack facets, right? That people don't look at them as darkness and realize it's the same thing.
right, right,
But I really started looking at that a lot closely last week because we create those reflections, and reflections are created through darkness because they're created through separation and exclusion to reflect back to us, right? So
right,
externalization and then reflection.
right,
And that's, and if you look at it without like trying to judge it as darkness, it's just no, it's just the way we've chosen to remember in the separation. And it's the way we've chosen to reflect back to ourselves, see facets of
right.
ourselves.
It's almost like, you used to look at, dating myself, the negatives for a photograph.
Yeah,
It's like you've got the photograph and you've got the negative of the photograph, and it's just the same but different.
right.
And that's the basis of creation in my mind.
Well, and it's funny because a long time ago I was guided to start looking in the negatives. And it's really funny to say that, to start looking in the negatives in the presentation of this dimension, because that's where we start seeing through to other dimensions, right? And the negatives meaning looking, so if we look out, like I look out the window and there are trees there, right? And so what we tend to do is look at what we see as solid, right? Which is the tree. But if you look at the negative, like in a photo negative, like you're talking, you're looking
The
at the
space is
air,
created.
the shapes around the leaves.
Right.
And they sometimes make faces. And sometimes you see faces and all kinds of beings and all kinds of understandings when you're looking at the negatives. And people say, oh, well, that's just your imagination. But I'm like, it's no different than how we see the, like what we call the positive, right?
Right. Right.
You you couldn't do that like on the photograph like you're talking about, because yep, I learned how to develop film myself years ago. But you wouldn't have the picture if you didn't have the negatives, because it's the
Right.
contrast that create it, right?
Right. Right.
Good morning, Laurel. So, so it's not it's not for us to look at one or the other. It's to look at the whole picture, because sometimes we don't even, well, we don't see the whole picture. And so if I was looking at a tree and I refused to look at, say, the air in between the leaves and the branches, I wouldn't see the tree.
Right. You wouldn't,
Because
yeah, you wouldn't be able to perceive it.
yeah, because we would just be seeing things in a glob, right? Um, you know, we look at, what do we say with our eyes? Well, it's easier to see things in a bright light, right? But what are we seeing in a bright light? What can we see in a bright light? We see, like, say, print, which is in black, right? Oh, I just lost Sarah. She obviously went into the negative. But so it's all that, when we're looking at stuff and if we just look at it as, different facets to the same presentation, it helps us to see things a whole lot better. Well, and it helps us to see things in wholeness because, like I was saying, if you see a whole, well, look at what we have in our society, right? In our 3D presentation. Hopefully Sarah will be back shortly. But if we look at the presentation in our 3D, yeah, she's gone, Laurel. I know. Hopefully she'll be back. Um, no, what was I going to say? Oh, in our 3D experience, like we have people what do we call? We call colorblind, right? So there's red, green, and there's blue, yellow, I think, colorblind. And meaning that the individual cannot distinguish because they don't have the separation in the vision to be able to see red, green, or blue and yellow. Hey, you're back.
Yeah.
That was weird. So anyway,
Yeah.
I was talking about the like color blindness, right, in
Right.
our existence and how like red, green, this red, green, and blue, yellow, right? Is it blue, yellow, red, green? Those are the two different kinds of color blindness, I think. But if somebody has, like, say, the red green, they can't tell the difference between red and green. And then we perceive them as being limited in what they can see because everything looks more flat, right?
Right.
Well, it's no different with the light and the dark, or the positive and the negative, or
Right.
the concrete and the, uh, it's not illusory. It's like concrete and like we're talking about the trees and the space between them and being able to see
Esoteric.
them. Yeah, or whatever. But you know what I'm saying.
Right.
So, so that's a great illustration of what we talk about in getting to wholeness, remembering our wholeness, not getting to, remembering our wholeness
Right.
and practicing that and just living from there. Because when we see the facets here in contrast, that's what we've created an entire existence and multiverse of contrast. That's how we reflect back to ourselves in remembrance. And then once we come back to remembrance, it all becomes part of the whole. And then there's no judgment, there's no better or worse, there's no good or bad. It just is, right?
Right.
So I don't know where that takes us, but
Well, I think it brings us all the way back around to, acceptance of acceptance of the wholeness, which includes everything.
well, and it goes back to what we were talking about with that guidance and truly existing from guidance from a place where there is no need to explain my guidance. There's no need to explain or justify my actions.
Right.
That our interaction is guided for whatever purpose. I don't have to sit here and say, well, no, because of this. And that's it. It's funny because we feel the most need to justify when we say no, but that's still like, so no, if you look at it as the negative, right, of the photo, like,
Right.
why do we have to justify its existence? It's there, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, if there's a no that comes up and it's a guided no without ego, then there's something for it to contrast so that things change direction so that there's a different perspective gained or added, or something like that. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't know where we go with that today. That feels like it's really important.
I don't know unless it's has to do with the judgment or the how we've defined the darkness,
Yeah.
figuring out how to refer to it without judgment.
Maybe we should name it Clive.
Right. Right. Well, and the yin and the yang, they're they're opposites, but there's not one perceived as negative.
Right. So did you have something else to talk about, or was this part of all what you've been looking at too?
The other thing that occurred to me, and it was early this morning that I was looking at it, and it was funny because it was the same meme that you were talking about. There was a tidbit in there that talked about love and fear. And for some reason, it just really struck me that, we go on and on about, the value of self-love and you need, the power of self-love and all that. Um, but what gelled for me this morning was that if if you are experiencing fear in a certain area, it is an indication that you have lack of self-love for yourself in that area. Because in my opinion, in my personal experience, that if I have fear in a certain area, it's because I'm not acknowledging myself in that area, and so I don't feel worthy or comfortable or whatever. So that allows the fear in.
Hmm.
So the because with that wholeness of self-love, what's there to be afraid of? Because you've got your own back.
Right. And it's all you.
And right. So it was that was an aha moment for me this morning, that it almost is like, well, that's another form of guidance.
Yes. Well, that's exactly the same thing that I was talking about, right? Yep. Well, it says see things as they really are with the clarity of balance. And I would change balance to wholeness, because balance implies there has to be two parts and it's all just part of the whole, right? It's
Right.
like taking it beyond that. And it keeps us in duality to talk about balance, actually.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, because there's always a give and take within the wholeness.
right. Right. So there's a natural, it just it
Ebb and
exists
flow.
at yeah, it exists and it doesn't exist.
Right.
That's just the
Oh,
wholeness in
that feels
itself.
good.
Yeah. So the thing is for us to have clarity and understanding on how. Laurel says that's not what I meant. That's what I meant. I'm not awake here yet. I know. I think she's over there in California, I guess now, right?
Oh, that's
So
right.
so so yeah, it's pretty early for you. So yeah, that wholeness and that watching it from that wholeness takes away judgment altogether.
Right.
Hmm, that feels
Well,
good.
and then if you translate that into the choices that you make from that place of wholeness, it really is empowering.
And I think the other thing that I've been looking at too is what we call unconditional love, because what came to me last week is what we call unconditional love has no real word because we don't really experience it in the body. Like because we are sequestering part of traditionally sequestering part of our consciousness into the body, right? So then we're,
There's yawn.
yep, creating partitions, right?
Right.
So we get confused. I think that's part of the thing is like really watching our words now, because unconditional love is actually just divine consciousness, which is really far beyond what we ever remember have
Right.
what we have ever remembered here, right? So I remember, so we talk about love, right? So love is an emotion that actually is egoically spurred too,
Mm-hmm.
in many respects, right? Because there's a preference, there's an affection, right? There's a preference
There's
for one thing,
judgment.
yes, over another, and that is like what we call a positive judgment, but it's still a judgment, right? So divine consciousness is far beyond anything of that, and it's so much bigger. And so like we think, oh, well, there's nothing that could be better than love. Well, it is, because there's wholeness, right?
Right.
And that's the whole, like it's so it's beyond words, right? And I go back to, and I think you and I were talking on the phone when I was thinking about this last week. I don't know. Or we're always connected anyway, so whatever.
Right. Right.
Texting, talking, whatever. Out there, it makes me think of the one time that I was there and we did that experience where I went out and I saw in one moment the whole of the entire multiverse. Like not saw, but was the whole of the entire multiverse. And I remembered all of it. And I saw it all in one beautiful, incredible moment. I had tears streaming down my face because it was the biggest, most incredible feeling that I ever remember feeling.
Right.
And because it was whole. It was like completely whole. And I saw the ebb and flow, and I saw the creation of duality and the resolution, and I saw it all in this one incredible movement. And then the evolution to something else. And there was just so much, like, and I want to say love, but it's beyond love. It's a completely different thing. Like, we think, okay, yeah, love is great. It's a great reminder. It's a great reminder to that. And the more we get to that place of remembering wholeness, the more we feel that hugeness
Right.
of embracing, but it's beyond what we call love, because we've defined love.
Right. Which
Yeah.
automatically diminishes its
Yes.
definition.
Yes. There's this, oh, there's my yawn. Yeah, here they come. So it's coming to that place of recognition that even the word love has its limits and limitations. Even the terms we're using, like unconditional love, which the thing is, because we put love and unconditional love, then we're like, oh, it's just different forms of the same thing. It's like you're still saying that that's not unconditional fear either, because that's all part of the whole as well, because it's part of that whole
Right.
separation we've created, right? But if we said unconditionally whole, wow, that has such a powerful feeling to it.
Yeah.
And that goes in my heart, like right there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's nice. Oh,
Yes.
good yawn.
So I think it's part of like today is just about remembering that what that is, which is us, right? Our wholeness.
Right.
And probably starting to get some clarity on how to act from there always, like how to remember how to act from that wholeness, like which we've talked about, but it's with this new like remembrance of it's completely different than love. It's
Right.
it's much more, much
Well, and
more.
I think you combine that with taking back ownership of your choices and aligning those choices with the guidance that comes from that unconditional wholeness. It's like I don't know. I sent you my blog this weekend, and at the end of it, I talked about something that I'd overheard Yasmin say And she was talking about yoga, about how you create the balance and it becomes easy when you stack the bones. And you get that to that place that it becomes easy. And that's the way I think about you align all this and it all becomes easy.
Everything we say and do.
Exactly. And it
Yes.
becomes a natural state.
Yep. Right. And then we never question guidance because we already know that alignment of wholeness. Right.
Right. Right.
And, oh yeah. And oh, that feels so yummy.
That, that feels just like, yeah, I just want to bathe in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because then it's just like, it's all awesome. Then there's no judgment on anything because it just is. And then it stops the edges of resistance, become, oh my gosh, I can't stop yawning now. Become softened. Like oh God, I'm just seeing all these dots connecting. Like literally
Right.
like these synapses connecting out there. So, all right. I say we just go out and do that, shall we?
Yes,
Whatever
absolutely.
that's already
Absolutely.
doing. All right. Oh, that was fabulous.
Oh, wow. Oh,
Couldn't wrap myself in that all day.
yeah, no kidding.
What was interesting was since I haven't used headphones like this before, and these are noise canceling headphones, they are seriously noise canceling. When we went out there, the first thing I heard was my heartbeat.
Oh,
And I
nice.
was like, and I was like, and at first it was distracting. I wanted to be distracted by, and I was like, and then I realized, well, this isn't just your heartbeat. It's, it's the whole heartbeat, right?
Right.
And then it was just like this roll of like, oh, it was just microcosm, macrocosm. It was this incredible journey. It was beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it was amazing.
And it's so interesting that it's so simple, right? And it comes back to what we've talked about all along, which is it's so simple.
Right.
I mean, wholeness is just wholeness, right? And it's
Right.
so simple, and it's only the complexities that we let that we judge, that we create judgment with, or definition, which is a judgment or whatever. And it's just like we segregate, continue to segregate and everything. It was just a beautiful, like I can't even describe what I saw because it was so encompassing.
Right.
And it's when we let go, it was like, okay, because at first, literally the first 30 seconds, all I could hear was my heartbeat. And I was like, okay, well, I can use that as a meditation tool too. Like I can use
Right.
that as a tool to help me get where I'm going. And it's like, well, it's whole, just as every piece within the wholeness is whole as well. Like, and that was just this whole,
Right.
yeah, it was great. This whole spiral. So I think for everyone this week is to really be observant to our observant. Be observant to our observances.
Right. And be observant to the choices.
Right. And if we commit in that wholeness, right, that unconditional wholeness, being unconditionally whole, like
Right.
to allow ourselves the clarity and understanding of how that changes everything that we do, say, and experience.
Right.
Yeah, that just feels incredible.
It really does.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avenuni.
signing off, and we'll see you next time on Ascended World.